The first thing the man did after being reborn was to reverse all of his class skills. Because he had obtained a divine tier buff, Mirror World, a power that allowed him to invert the effects of every skill he possessed. That was the age when dimensional rifts quietly opened across Blue Star, and countless monsters poured out to ravage the world. Any human who came into contact with a rift would awaken a mysterious power known as a class. From that moment, humanity relied on legions of class holders to fight back. Among them, Yin-Che was one of the very first awakeners. He built his own legion, tore through countless rifts, and even led his forces to conquer an SSS-level dungeon, the deadliest of them all. Yet before the joy of victory could fade, betrayal struck. The royal family of the Empire had begun to fear his power. For powerful class holders could easily rewrite the order of society itself. And Yun-Che, whose strength had already surpassed SSS tier, was considered the most dangerous anomaly of all. Roi, the comrade who had fought alongside him through countless life and death battles, secretly planted poison inside his armor. Her cold voice echoed in his ears as his teammates collapsed one after another. Yin-Che's consciousness dimmed. At the brink of death, his hidden skill, Mirror World, was triggered. His soul sank into the depths of the river, and he slept for 66 long years. Until one day, a young boy was being beaten and hung from a tree by a group of thugs on the riverbank. They eventually threw the boy into the river. "Why do they always bully me?" The boy's dying hatred whispered through the water. That surge of resentment awakened the slumbering soul beneath. In the next instant, Yin-Che's spirit fused with the boy's body. The river erupted in blinding light. The thugs panicked and fled, terrified, as a new rift began to form before their eyes, something far beyond their ability to handle. Only George, the boy they had forced to guide them, hesitated. Clenching his teeth, he turned back to try and save him. But by the time he reached the shore, the rift had already fully formed, and a swarm of lesser wraiths emerged from within. Meanwhile, Yin-Che, newly awakened, instinctively tried to unleash a killing move. Then a green light descended from above, and the attacking monster's health bars suddenly filled back up. George froze. Is he insane? He's healing them. Yin-Che glanced down at his system panel, his heart sinking. Character info. Name, Yin-Che, our race. Human a level, 5 class. Bard HP, for 30/480 MP. 120 stamina, 8 spirit, 8 strength, for a defense, 6 agility, 6 crit rate, 0.5% mana regen, 1/SEXP, 0/1200. Bard? He paused, realizing this wasn't his original body. Normally, anyone who came into contact with a rift would have a system bound to them and a random initial class assigned, one that couldn't be changed. From there, one could grow stronger through dungeon battles, gaining powers aligned with their class. In his previous life, Yin-Che had been a warrior whose stats were honed to absolute perfection. At the moment before his death, Yin-Che had seemingly activated a skill called Mirror Inversion. After that, his consciousness had been trapped within the mirror world until he heard the dying scream of a young boy. He realized he must have borrowed the boy's body to return to life. But the boy's body was pathetically weak. Even these minor monsters were far beyond what it could handle. With their speed, he couldn't even escape. To make matters worse, none of his skills worked. The class he'd awakened into was the weakest support type, Bard, whose abilities focused solely on buffs and healing. In combat, it was inferior to every fighting class, and that was likely why the boy had been bullied and rejected. Yin-Che's gaze returned to the system panel. Maybe he could try that skill, see what it might do. Unsure of the method, he cast it toward a nearby monster. System. You used Mirror World on Lesser Wraith B. System. Activation failed. Requirements not met. He frowned. Was his level too low? Or did he need a reflective surface, like the lake before? He tried again, this time targeting a puddle that mirrored the sky. This time, no failure prompt. Only, activation level insufficient. As he expected, mirror inversion could only be triggered when a mirror-like surface existed. Leveling up wasn't an option right now. So he tried another target, the monster's weapon. System: you used Mirror World on Wraith's Cleaver. Again, the message repeated. Operation failed. Level insufficient. Nearby, George shouted, desperate, "Stop wasting time with those useless support spells. I can't hold them much longer." Just then, a brilliant column of light erupted from the ground. A massive shadow slowly took form. Elite monster. Dystrophic overlord. Level 10. Description: a demon born from the resentment of an ancient battlefield. Race: Wrath Demon. HP: 1680. MP: 100. Stamina: 28. Spirit: 5. Strength: 27. Defense: 20. Agility: 10. George's face went pale. We're finished. That thing needs at least a level 10 fighter to kill. We're dead. But in that instant, inspiration struck Yin-Che. He aimed mirror inversion at George's barrier. Ding! Cannot invert another skill. He immediately understood. The skill couldn't target others. So he redirected it onto himself. Then what if I invert my own skill? Skill activated. Vine control. Mirror world. Inversion successful. Ding! Skill converted. Chaotic thorns. Countless thorny vines burst from the ground, violently twisting upward to block the monster's advance. But then, something strange happened. The elite monster at the front suddenly turned red-eyed. With a furious roar, it spun around and tore into its own kind, its claws shredding another demon apart in seconds. George stood frozen, utterly dumbfounded. Moments ago, Yin-Che had been a useless burden. So how on earth were those monsters now tearing each other apart? In just a few seconds, the rift was filled with roars and carnage. Yin-Che, however, felt nothing but exhilaration. The true nature of mirror inversion revealed itself. It completely reversed the skill's effects. His original skill, Vine Control, simply summoned vines to restrain targets with a chance of immobilization. But after inversion, it became Chaos Thorns, a power that drove enemies into madness. This was the might of the mirror world. A grin tugged at the corner of Yin-Che's lips. Who would have thought these useless support spells could become devastating weapons once inverted? A cold gleam flashed in his eyes. So what if I'm a support class? With the mirror world, I'll tear through everything. This dungeon, and every traitor who once betrayed me. They'll all pay in blood. He then targeted his basic skill, Blade Strike, and activated inversion. System: reverse skill unlocked. Trick Blade effect: each time you consume mana, your attack power increases by 10%. Mana cost: 40. Duration: 60 seconds. Yin-Che picked up a weapon dropped by a fallen monster, smirking. So, each skill use gives me 10% more attack power. Huh. Which means any skill I cast will keep stacking damage endlessly. As the elite monsters continued killing each other, he reaped the EXP and leveled up again and again. A flawless cycle of growth. After all, every time he leveled up, his mana instantly refilled to full. The moment it did, Yin-Che cast Chaos Thorns once more. System: you have triggered Trick Blade's effect. Attack power plus 10%. 2.5 minutes later, his attack power had skyrocketed to 120%, more than double his original strength. With a single swing of his blade, Yin-Che cleaved through the elite monster, killing it instantly. George could only stare in disbelief. Well, what kind of power is that? That can't be the same Yin-Che who always got bullied. A level 5 bard doing this? The ground suddenly trembled, fissures spreading like lightning. A massive claw burst through the soil with a thunderous roar. System prompt: final boss, Battlefield Chimera, has appeared in the dungeon. Battlefield Chimera, LV.21, description: a supreme demon born from the lingering resentment of an ancient battlefield. Race: Wrath Demon. HP: 10-0-20. MP: 300. Stamina: 167. Spirit: 15. Strength: 180. Defense: 80. Agility: 19. Yin-Che frowned slightly. Unexpected. For a newly spawned random dungeon to have a hidden level 21 boss, this was no ordinary encounter. He decided to test its strength. As he unleashed his spell, the system chimed. You use Chaos Thorns on Battlefield Chimera. System. Action failed. Target immune to confusion. In the next instant, George threw up his shield and leapt in front of Yun-Che. The sight made Yun-Che's chest tighten. He suddenly recalled his old comrade, Joe Benben. Back then, that man had always stood in front of him just like this, protecting him without hesitation. But George's shield was far too weak. The Chimera's blast struck like a meteor, hurling him dozens of meters away. He hit the ground hard, blood splattering across the dirt. Yun-Che rushed over and tried to cast heal, only to realize how useless the skill truly was. It drained his entire mana pool just to restore a sliver of health. Damn, Bard's healing really is garbage, he muttered. Got any potions? Just one. Huff figures. He steadied his breath. Hold on, George. I'll finish this in 1 minute. His eyes sharpened as he dashed forward, harvesting EXP from dying elites. Before Trick Blade expired, he leveled up, his mana instantly restored to full. To defeat a level 21 boss, I need at least a 400% attack boost, he calculated swiftly. Trick Blade lasted only 60 seconds. To reach that boost, he'd need to cast Chaos Thorns 40 times within 50 seconds. Without hesitation, Yun-Che launched another wave of spells, stacking buffs one after another. Within moments, his level shot up to 12. His attack power surged past 510%. With a roar, he leapt high into the air, his blade glowing like a comet, slicing clean through the Chimera's massive claw. Crossing both arms, he unleashed a radiant cross slash that carved deep into the beast's back. The Chimera howled in agony before collapsing to the ground with a thunderous crash. George stood frozen, wide-eyed. I must be dreaming. A level 5 bard, just one man, had single-handedly slain the ultimate wrath demon, the boss of this entire dungeon. George quickly ran up to Yun-Che, still reeling from what he'd witnessed. Wait, it's really you, right? How did you suddenly become this strong? Yun-Che didn't answer. He simply fixed his gaze on the young man and asked instead, what's your relation to Joe Benben? When George replied that Joe Benben was his great-grandfather. Junke Froze. Great-grandfather? His mind trembled. Back then, all of his comrades had been slaughtered by Roe. Could it be some had survived? And that arrogant brat from the past, he'd actually left behind descendants. Yun-Che stared at George, just about to ask, your great-grandfather, is he? But George quickly cut him off. Now's not the time for that, he said softly, his head lowering. If you don't want to answer my questions, that's fine. Just don't humiliate me like this. After a pause, George added quietly, you've been hiding your power all this time, haven't you? He then changed the subject, urging, we should get back to school. This afternoon, we're visiting the Modern History Museum. If we skip, they'll notice. Yun-Che hesitated for a moment, then nodded. For now, it was better to stay inconspicuous. The less George questioned, the safer his cover remained. The Modern History Museum, he thought. If I'm right, it should hold records of everything that happened after my death. Soon, as they walked down the street, Yun-Che couldn't help but marvel. The world had changed beyond recognition. After decades of slumber, civilization now used dungeon materials to power carriages. He noticed other inventions too, some unfamiliar, others eerily similar to items he'd once seen inside rifts. One thing especially puzzled him. Normally, only loot dropped from monsters could be brought out of a rift. For instance, the ancient chimera ring that now gleamed faintly on his finger. Items like these, equipment and skill books, could be carried via one's inventory, making trade between class holders possible. But everything else that couldn't fit into an inventory should have vanished with the dungeon itself, once the boss was slain, and yet, the air here was thick with rift energy. Could something have happened after my death? A revolution, maybe? Yun-Che wondered, frowning deeply. Before long, his figure appeared before the grand gates of the Modern History Museum. As the instructor stood before the museum and began his speech, Yun-Che's blood ran cold. Before him towered a massive statue, the image of the kingdom's supreme ruler, celebrated as the savior who ended the dungeon catastrophe, King Roe. The instructor's voice echoed across the plaza. I'm sure most of you know this place. It was the site of the legendary Rebellion War over 50 years ago. At that time, humanity suffered greatly from dungeon invasions. When the most terrifying SSS-level dungeon appeared, fear engulfed the entire world. Our king, Roe, personally led the royal army into battle. Despite massive casualties, he conquered the nightmare dungeon and restored peace. But after the great victory, a traitor emerged, a betrayer who turned against the very king he had served. And that traitor's name, the instructor's tone hardened. Yoon-ki, once trusted by the king, yet he betrayed the crown and the people. A sinner damned through history. It was the young Prince Roe who, despite his grief, rose again, leading the charge to reclaim the empire. And with the aid of the hero Ding Kun, he crushed the rebellion and restored order. Each word stabbed through Yun-che like a blade. His hands trembled as rage churned inside him. Roe, that butcher who had slaughtered his comrades, was now revered as a savior, a sainted ruler, and he, the true hero who conquered the SSS dungeon, had been branded a traitor for eternity. We defeated that dungeon. You were the one who betrayed us. Yun-che clenched his fists so tightly that his knuckles turned white. Yet something else gnawed at him. Ding Kun, he thought. That name didn't exist among the original raiders. Who the hell is this new hero? Just then, a familiar, mocking voice called out from behind him. Yun-che? You useless piece of trash. You're still alive? No way. You got sucked into that new rift. The voice belonged to Ding Su, the thug leader from earlier. He swaggered over with his gang, grinning. Didn't they say that new rift was cleared already? Must have been some pro nearby who carried them. Guess these two just got lucky. Nearby, students began to gather around, murmuring in surprise. Wait, new dungeon? They actually went through one. Holy crap, and lived? Ding Su placed a hand on George's shoulder with a smirk. Man, lucky you. Didn't think you'd crawl out alive. His tone shifted, eyes narrowing. But hey, we did almost get you killed in there. So, how do you plan to pay that debt? George's temper snapped. It was your fault. You pushed us in there. I'm reporting this. You and your goons nearly got me and Yun-che killed. Ding Su suddenly grabbed George's head and sneered. Hey, what's going through that thick skull of yours? Looks like you still don't get the situation. Pointing at the statue nearby, he mocked. Open your eyes. See that traitor being crushed under the hero's foot? That's your great-grandfather, Joe Ben. And as the descendant of a traitor, you still think anyone would help you? Then, raising his voice, Ding Su shouted, No one is allowed to insult my great-grandfather, Ding Kun. The crowd immediately erupted. Ding Kun's a national hero who ended the rebellion, someone exclaimed. And George's ancestor was the traitor Joe Ben. How dare he talk back? Another added. His grandfather killed so many people. If it weren't for the hero, countless more would have died. Amid the chaos, even a teacher stepped in. George, calm down. You know I'm fair. I'll say a word for you. The teacher frowned, apologized to Ding Su. The hero spared your family back then. You should be grateful, not disrespectful. George's eyes shimmered with frustration, his voice trembling. Ding Su, emboldened, smirked and patted George's head. Even if I beat you up right now, no one would stop me. Who'd ever stand up for a traitor's descendant? He leaned closer, sneering. You're a mutt nobody wants, and the most disgusting kind of mutt at that. Just as he raised his fist, a blur shot across the air, followed by a sharp crack as a kick slammed squarely into Ding Su's face. With a loud thud, Ding Su went down hard, landing on his face in humiliation. Yun-che stood where he was, his gaze cold as ice. Don't the hero families ever bother to discipline their brats? He said icily. The crowd erupted. Had Yun-che lost his mind? How dare he strike a descendant of a hero in public? And he was only a level 5 support. Didn't he fear being beaten to death? Ding Su scrambled up, furious, signaling his men to swarm. But to Yun-che, their movements were sluggish as snails. He moved like wind, one punch per thug, and in seconds had knocked all of them flat. Finally, he grabbed Ding Su and rained down blows like falling rain. Bloodshot-eyed, Ding Su activated rage, his attack power spiking by 25%. He couldn't believe he was being humiliated by so-called trash. In desperation, he drew his weapon, the Firebreaker hammer, and swung it at Yun Che with all his might. Yun Che slipped aside with barely an effort, evading the heavy blow. Then a precise, powerful punch landed cleanly on Ding Su's jaw. Ding Su managed only, impossible, before collapsing unconscious. At that moment, the teacher finally snapped back to attention, eyes blazing. To insult a hero is shameless. Now you assault a hero's descendant in public? Outrageous, he barked. He drew his baton slowly, his expression deadly serious. Yun Che, however, simply flicked his hand and revealed the ancient ring on his finger. Instantly, a massive purple silhouette materialized. The teacher's baton shattered the moment it struck that form. His face drained of color. What kind of equipment could block my strike like that? Yun Che replied coolly. You call yourself fair, yet you blindly accept Ding Su's one-sided story. Are you currying favor with the hero families? His words hit a nerve. The teacher forced a calm expression and promised to investigate, but his eyes flickered. He still couldn't identify the origin of Yun Che's equipment and wondered aloud. Do you have some backer? Yun Che glanced at the battered Chimera ancient ring on his finger, an epic drop from a level 21 Lord. It was no match against a level 35 instructor. He then turned to leave, saying, Fine, expel me from the museum as punishment. With that, he and George walked away. The crowd was dumbfounded. Was this really the same useless Yun Che they knew? He showed no fear even before the teacher. Outside the museum, Yun Che's expression darkened. Joe Ben had once been his comrade, now labeled a traitor like him. It seemed few of his old allies had survived. He looked at George and admitted he was weak in history. Could George tell him about Ding Kuan? George eagerly explained. Rumor had it Ding Kuan uncovered the traitor Yun Che's plot and ambushed near the SSS level rift, helping to quell the rebellion. Not only that, Ding Kuan was said to have ended the great catastrophe at Winterhold. Pointing at the statue's flowing cloud sword, George added, They say that's the weapon used to execute the traitor Yun Che, a legendary gray blade. Yun Che's fist tightened. It was obvious this narrative had been arranged long ago. The Winterhold catastrophe had been settled by him in blood, and that so-called flowing cloud sword had been his own blade. A cold hatred flared in his eyes. He had already chosen his first target on the list of vengeance, Ding Kuan. Then start with you. I'll settle the score one by one. Outside the Ding family estate, guards paced back and forth on constant patrol. One of them suddenly snapped his head around, eyes scanning the surroundings with alert suspicion. Yun Che and George crouched in the shadow of a wall, not daring to make a sound. George hissed in a low voice, We should go. There are too many guards. Even if we sneak in, if Ding Su shows up, he'll recognize us. But Yun Che's eyes flashed with hard resolve. He thought to himself, he really wanted it. He wanted to take Ding Kuan's life right now. According to George, however, Ding Kuan spent most of his time inside a high-level rift. Those high-tier rifts were guarded by military forces. Entry required proper permits. As a descendant, Ding Su's family would naturally possess such permits. Yun Che asked George quietly, They're only a branch of the Ding lineage. What kind of place needs that many guards? George answered with a helpless shrug. They're descendants of heroes. There's a rift hidden inside the estate. Low-level rifts are traded privately now, he continued. But people without connections get shut out. Ding Su can bring guards into the family rift to farm monsters and level up whenever he likes. We ordinary students? We fight tooth and nail in the school rift just to scrape by. Yun Che felt the weight of change. The world had shifted massively while he slept. Back in his old life, high-tier hunting zones were dangerous but not fenced off with this kind of hierarchy. George's voice carried a note of bitterness. Most graduates end up around level 15 to 20. If you can't get a rift-related job, your level just stalls. Meanwhile, the Ding estate guards, thanks to the family rift, average around level 30. To reach higher hunting grounds, ordinary people either enlist or pass brutal exams to join guild troops or military academies. Yunche realized the truth. The richer and more powerful you are, the faster you level up. George kept urging him to give up. The level gap is huge. Even if you're strong now, you can't beat those guards. Yunche nodded. George was right. With his current strength, killing the so-called hero Ding Kuan was out of the question, let alone the heavily protected King Roi above him. But Yunche had no intention of giving up easily. He knew that scouts around level 30 only had small-range detection. Skills like Hawkeye, Enhanced Hearing, or Rat Familiar couldn't possibly cover the entire estate. And this wasn't a deadly high-tier dungeon. Guards here were bound to be complacent. After analyzing the situation, he concluded they had a real chance to slip in. Compared to the near-perfect surveillance webs of high-level dungeons from his past life, the defenses here were riddled with flaws. George still hesitated. Even if we get in, it's a private rift. If we die inside, no one will ever know. Yunche grabbed him by the collar, voice low and sharp. Don't you want to change your fate? You're Joe Ben's great-grandson. Your family's fate won't change on its own. It's up to you, not some uncertain future. His tone hardened. At least I won't give up this chance. George fell silent for a long moment before finally following. Yunche gestured for silence, scanning the area carefully. No signs of summoned scouts. Then the two vaulted the wall with practiced ease. George gasped when he spotted the glowing rift fissure below. An underground dungeon? This one's stronger than the one by the river, he murmured. Yet inside, most monsters seemed to have been cleared out by Ding family guards. Yunche pointed at the two remaining creatures, signaling George to take them. George paled. No way, I can't fight those. Regret washed over him. He shouldn't have listened to Yunche's madness. All he wanted now was to go home. Try fighting back, Yunche said calmly. George screamed in panic, but surprisingly, despite his clumsy moves, he took almost no real damage. Yunche's eyes glinted. The kid's talent was real, he just lacked confidence. His movements looked chaotic, but his health barely dropped. When it seemed George was about to fall, Yunche dashed forward, blade flashing. In one clean motion, both monsters were slain, but a faint smile crossed his lips. His old friend's descendant had finally taken his first step. George stared at his interface, jaw dropping. He leveled up. Yunche explained calmly. Experience points are divided by contribution. If you don't help in combat, your share will be tiny. As he spoke, an ancient blade shimmered into existence in his hand. He noticed how agile George was in battle and asked, "How did you distribute your stat points?" George scratched his head. "Everything's evenly split, except spirit." Yunche frowned slightly. "But shield bearers usually ignore agility, don't they?" George gave a bitter smile. "If I didn't add to agility, no one at school would party with me. Nobody wants a tank who moves like a snail. And most of the time, before I even swing, the monsters are already dead." Yunche's expression hardened. "Even so, you need to think long-term. Advancement classes past level 60 all have stat requirements. Take Bastion Fortress, for example. It needs at least 60 endurance and 90 defense to qualify." George shrugged. "Most people never hit level 50, let alone 60. That's an S-class goal, way too far off." Yunche cut him off, voice firm. "From now on, you should start aiming for S-class." Still, he knew he needed to plan his own advancement too. His support class had only managed to turn the tide thanks to his hidden skill, Mirror World. Opening his system interface, he was surprised to find Mirror World could actually be upgraded. Moments later, system alerts rang in his mind. Shadow-type monster soul acquired. Converting into Mirror World essence. A monster lunged from the dark. Yunche twisted aside, blade flashing, a clean decapitation. He followed up with a crushing stomp, shattering another zombie skull. Then the crimson aura around him flickered out. His Trick Blade buff had expired. He eyed the snarling ghoul ahead, thinking Trick Blade's power is great, but it can't sustain long fights. His stamina was draining fast, continuing was pointless. Still, he allowed himself a faint smile. This single rift run had boosted him 2 whole levels. He was now level 17. Far beyond the growth rate of any ordinary class holder. Yin Che bent down to pick up the dropped loot, when a sudden wave of dread shot through his chest. His instincts screamed danger. He immediately dove behind a rock, holding his breath. George crept closer, whispering shakily, "The patrols are getting tighter." And with fewer monsters left around, the risk just keeps going up. Yun Che nodded. He was juggling too much at once, fighting monsters, tracking patrols, and timing his trick blade buff. Even for him, it was stretching thin. He flipped through the newly obtained skill book, frowning. Skill, Air Brick Technique. After Mirror Reversal, it had become Phantom Brick, a spell that could only phase objects the size of a brick. Practically useless in real combat. Still, his disappointment faded as excitement sparked again. Mirror World was only 30% away from leveling up. If level 1 reversal is this powerful, what would level 2 be like? He thought, eyes glinting. If I can kill this rift's boss, maybe I can level it up instantly. He and George crept toward the center of the dungeon. The moment they arrived, Yun Che's pupils contracted. The Rift Lord was bound in place by glowing silver chains, surrounded by heavily armed guards, while mechanical owls circled above for reconnaissance. Even George couldn't help whispering, "The Rift boss is restrained? That's insane. At school, only teachers can even get near a dungeon lord. And those chains, they're definitely high-grade equipment." After a moment's thought, Yun Che dismissed the idea of a direct assault. At level 17, he'd be swarmed and torn apart in seconds. Better to pick off the outer guards first, he decided. Maybe one of them knows where the access passes are. He activated Trick Blade. In the blink of an eye, his form blurred into a streak of motion. One guard was down before he could even scream. Yin Che pinned him to the ground, voice cold and sharp. "Want to live? Then talk. Where are the access passes for the hero's rift?" The terrified guard trembled violently. It's in the Grand Elder's study. There's a whole stack of them. They're not even that rare." The guard stammered, "And most of the passes are temporary. They don't log the user's data. Without someone familiar to escort you, the patrols will stop you immediately." Yin Che's eyes went cold. "Hand over everything in your pack." Trembling, the guard pulled out a single skill book, his only possession, and held it out. Yin Che realized then that the Ding family enforced strict rules. All Rift loot had to be surrendered, and guards were only given token rewards in return. Still, his eyes lit up as he checked the item stats. After Mirror Reversal, it became a permanent passive skill, Moonlight Descent. After using a healing skill, attack power increases by 6% for 15 seconds. With the terrified guard leading the way, Yin Che soon reached the outer perimeter of the inner residence. "Be careful," the guard whispered. "The family head is stationed inside. He's level 42. And the Grand Elder and the 3 submasters, they're all above level 50. The information might have terrified anyone else, but in Yin Che's mind, a bold plan was already forming. He turned to George. "Stay here. Don't move. I'll draw the head out." Then he slipped back toward the area where the Rift boss had been bound. His gaze locked onto the shining chain. A smirk tugged at his lips. He knew this type of high-tier restraint mechanism all too well from his previous life. Drawing his ancient blade, he slipped the tip into the lock's core. Click. The supposedly unbreakable chain sprang open with ease. Before the guards could even react, the Rift Lord let out a thunderous roar that shook the entire chamber. The creature tore free from its bindings, eyes glowing with madness. Panic erupted among the guards. "What the hell? The boss is breaking loose. How did the seal get undone?" From the shadows, Yin Che watched the chaos unfold with a faint smirk. Everything was going exactly as planned. The family head of the Ding clan would surely come out to deal with the Berserk Dungeon Lord, giving him the perfect chance to slip into the inner residence and locate the access passes. Meanwhile, at the front gate of the inner compound, the second master, Ding Hao, greeted someone with an ingratiating smile as he opened a car door. "Miss Yin Sha, please step out." A strikingly beautiful woman descended gracefully from the carriage, her poise refined, though her eyes carried a faint chill of detachment. As she reached the stairs, a servant accidentally got in the way. Ding Hao's face twisted with irritation. He kicked the man down the steps. "Out of my sight." George, still hiding in the distance, kept his eyes fixed on the gate, muscles tense. The sudden sound of footsteps behind him made his heart skip a beat. He spun around, only to see Yin-Che. "You're back already?" he whispered, shocked. "Didn't need to interfere," Yin-Che replied calmly. "They won't be subduing that dungeon lord anytime soon." Then his tone shifted. "What did you see just now?" George's gaze drifted toward the servant, still lying on the ground. "That's my uncle, Joel," he muttered, voice trembling. "He's a servant for the Dings now." Yin-Che's expression darkened. After his so-called rebellion, his own name had been branded as treasonous, an excuse for the Empire to slaughter his comrades. The Zhou family, once his allies, had been nearly wiped out, that in truth, surviving like this might have been crueler than death. The remnants of the Zhou family were spared only to serve as props for the Ding clan's public image of mercy, that if they wanted to keep living, they had to kneel, reduced to the dogs of their masters. The elders of the Zhou family had once dreamed of changing their fate, but their rebellion ended in tragedy. George's father was tortured until his mind broke, and his uncle became a loyal lapdog to the Dings. From then on, the Joss survived only by serving their masters like obedient dogs. Yin-Che's gaze sharpened. "So you're still hesitating?" Without waiting for an answer, he turned and strode toward the inner residence. In an age where every rift was under the Empire's iron control, there was no hope of redemption without taking a risk. Some chances, once missed, never came again. "I can help you change," he said quietly, "but the first step has to come from you." George stared after him, trembling. "He's insane. That's the Ding family, rulers of half the Empire. We can't possibly fight them." The fear in his chest was suffocating. Yin-Che didn't look back. "I'm not just defying them," he said. "I'm defying the entire Empire." The words struck George like thunder. He watched Yin-Che's determined silhouette disappear into the darkness. Images of his father's madness and his uncle's groveling grin flashed before his eyes. Inside the Ding family's estate, Second Master Ding Hao's expression was grim. The Rift Lord's rampage couldn't be an accident. Someone must have set it free. But why take such a risk? What were they after? Meanwhile, Yin-Che had already slipped unseen into the inner compound. Hearing Ding Hao address the woman as Miss Yin-Sha, he felt a jolt of surprise. From Ding Hao's deferential tone, her status was clearly high, and she bore the same surname, Yin. Could that really be coincidence? Elsewhere, the Grand Master, Ding Yi, had successfully subdued the raging dungeon lord. Emerging from the teleportation gate, he barked orders to his guards. "Surround the residence. Whoever released the boss isn't ordinary. Find them." Back inside, Yin-Che activated Phantom Phase, targeting the drawer before him. 4 seconds of intangibility. He reached deep inside, fingers brushing against rough paper and leather bindings. Not just a journal. There were several high-tier skill books. Point 1 stood out. Radiant Slow Field, reducing the speed of all enemies within 20 meters by 20%. On the other side, George fixed his eyes on the approaching guards, then steeled himself. With a roar, he bolted out from the bushes. The patrol snapped to attention and converged on him. George ran for his life, drawing every guard's focus. He had to buy time for Yin-Che. From a window, Yin-Che watched and allowed a hint of approval to show. Finally, the kid had overcome himself. He vaulted down and shouted to the guards below, "The chains and the skill books are with me." Enraged, the guards immediately reversed course and gave chase. Yin-Che quickly reversed Radiant Slow Field into Radiant Haste. Allies within 30 meters now receive a 30% speed boost. Inside the Ding Manor, Grand Master Ding Yi barked orders. Teams 2 and 3 fall back and defend the Rift Lord. He stared in Yin-Che's direction and suddenly realized Yin-Che wasn't fleeing. He was rushing the core. Yin-Che's plan was exactly that. The guard's full deployment meant the Rift Lord had been subdued and its HP must be at its lowest. Kill it now, and Mirror World might well level up. The teleport gate flashed ahead. Yin-Che's eyes burned with intent. He had poured most of his stat points into agility. His movement far outpaced ordinary guards. Only the prowlers and archers could barely keep up with him. Arriving at the core confirmed his calculations. The Rift Lord, a gluttonous paladin, was bound by runes, shown in the status bar as crippled. The guards had sealed it to prevent further harm. A cold smile curled Yun Che's lips. Now was when it was weakest. The guards had finally caught up. He was ready. With a lift of his palm, a burst of purple energy detonated. The guard cried out. Confusion status windows popped above their heads. A mage, gripped by the effect, uncontrollably began casting spells at his own comrades. Yun Che let out a faint, mocking laugh. None of this surprised him. Since his death, Blue Star had enjoyed decades of peace. These so-called professionals, though high-leveled, were utterly devoid of real combat experience. Their movements were polished, but lifeless. His body blurred into a streak of violet light, darting through the chaos like a phantom. Just as he was about to reach the Dungeon Lord, a violent surge of power crashed toward him. Ding Yi, the Grand Master himself, had joined the fight. "Let's see what you're made of, fool." Ding Yi roared, swinging his axe down. Yun Che met it calmly, raising his dagger to parry the blow. A violet chain of energy coiled around his hand. Though it lacked the full attribute boost, its durability rivaled a level 60 artifact. He twisted sharply, redirecting the force of Ding Yi's strike downward. The blast slammed into the ceiling array on the ground, shattering the runes with a thunderous crack. Landing lightly before the Dungeon Lord, Yun Che smirked. "Much appreciated, Master Ding." A radiant beam of violet light flared from his fingertips, piercing through the massive creature's body. System prompt. Dungeon Lord, crippled, slain successfully. Artifact, living relic, leveled up, current level, 20. Skill, Mirror World, leveled up, current rank, LV2. Ding Yi trembled with rage, his eyes burning with disbelief. Yun Che, unfazed, tapped his skill interface. In an instant, a surge of violet force blasted Ding Yi's axe from his hands. The guards froze in shock before their eyes. Yun Che's figure simply vanished. Space rippled. The dungeon collapsed into fragments of glass and light. When Yun Che opened his eyes again, he stood within a realm of endless reflections, the strange, otherworldly mirror world. Yun Che surveyed the world around him. Half-transparent guard phantoms drifted across the mirrored void, endlessly replaying their final moments. Kneeling, he brushed his fingertips along the ground. A shard of crystal mirror stone rose weightlessly into his hand. System prompt. Item acquired. Mirror stone, portable beyond mirror world. A spark of surprise lit his eyes. So, leveling mirror world to LV2 actually allowed him to bring objects back to reality. Opening his skill list, he noticed that aside from Phantom Phase and Chaos Thorns, every other skill remained grayed out. The note beneath them read, "Base skill not learned. Reverse form unavailable." "So that's it," he murmured. These were all the mirrored versions of existing abilities. Once he learned a normal skill in the real world, its inverse form here would unlock automatically. LV1 had merely been a weakened prototype. Realization dawned on him. He began scrolling through the list, planning combinations. Pre-selecting stronger reversals now would save countless wasted upgrades later. Suddenly, the surrounding crystals began to tremble. Wisps of green fire burst forth, taking form as howling undead wreathed in spectral flames. Yun Che's blade flashed. One swing, and the nearest wraith shattered into fragments. System prompt. New skill unlocked. Undead Pact. Defeat an undead to bind it as your summon. Max summon level scales with player level. Yun Che's eyes gleamed. So not only can I bring back items, I can also bring back servants from this world. The countdown on his HUD ticked down. Mirror walk. 10 seconds remaining. Without hesitation, his form flickered and vanished into the shifting reflections. When reality snapped back, the secret realm was still in chaos. Guards shouted, arguing about his mysterious disappearance, until a cold voice rose behind Ding Yi. "Done yelling? After chasing me this long, it's time you paid some interest." As Yun Che spoke, his palms slowly opened. Emerald energy flared to life, rippling outward like a pulse. Moments later, countless spectral figures clawed their way up from the ground. The undead materialized in perfect formation, their hollow roars echoing as they surged toward the Ding family guards. "Oomph, just a bunch of low-tier wraiths," Dingy scoffed, forcing composure. "Nothing to fear." But before he could finish, the front line's shields were shredded apart by razor-like claws. Worse still, the slain undead burst into flickering green flames, then reformed seconds later. The guards' confidence shattered. Panic rippled through the ranks. Ding's expression twisted. "Impossible. Each revival should drain massive mana. If we kill them repeatedly, he'll burn out his energy reserves." Yet Yinshe showed no signs of weakening. If anything, the green aura around him grew darker, stronger. By the time Ding realized what was happening, Yinshe had already vanished from the battlefield. Outside the rift, a single punch from Yinshe sent the guards surrounding George flying. "Mission's done," he said coolly. "Time to move." George hesitated for half a second, then followed without a word. "Back home." Yinshe unfolded his palm. Resting, there was a silver-etched access pass, glowing faintly. "So, the pass is mine," he murmured. "Now I just need someone who can get me inside the hero's rift." He began sorting through his spoils. The Chimera ring was 94% damaged, but otherwise, the raid was a success. "At least it paid off," he smirked. "Picked up a dozen of Ding's skill books while I was at it." Scanning through the tomes, his eyes gleamed. Battle Hymn increased crit and damage, while its mirrored form, Shield Hymn, enhanced defense and resistance. "Perfect," he thought. "With these buffs, I can stack my stats even higher." He also gained a Lord-tier relic, Corrupted Knight's Armor, its aura still heavy with death. More importantly, he had now fully unlocked the Undead Pact, granting him command over his summoned army. But Yinshe knew this was only the beginning. From the gear on Ding Kuin's statue, that man had been an S-class Berserker subtype. To face something like that, he muttered, eyes narrowing, "I'll need a Death Knight of equal rank, and I'll have to hit level 50 first. Only then will vengeance truly begin." "They're not coming after us, right?" George asked nervously. Yinshe replied calmly, "Relax. We've lost them, and no one saw our faces. We're fine." George still looked uneasy, fidgeting as he walked. Yinshe gave him a reassuring glance. "You're young, I get it. But tell me, any rifts nearby where a powerful fighter once fell?" "I'm looking for a higher-tier dungeon to level up," he added with a faint smile. "As for what kind of fighter, you'll find out soon enough." George thought for a moment. "There is one," he said hesitantly, "but it's the Academy's rift. Completely restricted. No way we can sneak in." "Restricted? Huh," Yinshe murmured. "Then I'll just have to use special means." Later, in a teacher's private residence, Yinshe placed a violet glowing skill book on the table. The man's eyes widened. "A rare purple skill book for a Wanderer class? You're giving this to me." He frowned, conflicted. "You know the Academy Rift is reserved. I can't bend that rule." However, he continued after a pause, "It's currently open for graduating students. Lower years can't enter. But if a student shows exceptional talent, a mentor can recommend them. I'll see what I can do." Days later, Yinshe stood before the rift gate as students buzzed around in excitement. "This might be my last time in a rift," one said eagerly. "I'm farming every monster I can." Others bowed in gratitude. "All thanks to the hero's blessing. We'd never have this chance without him." Yinshe's eyes narrowed. Something about this hero's rift didn't sit right. This rift, the teacher announced, was a gift from the hero himself. It said he once fought here. Some traces of him may still remain. The hero's rift. Yinshe thought darkly. Isn't this the very place where that hero butchered George's ancestor? "Be cautious," the teacher warned. "It's a high-level zone. Xiao Xie, you'll lead the group." Xiao Xie groaned. "How am I supposed to level up like this?" "Enough complaints," the teacher barked. "The rift's opening, move." Nearby graduates whispered. "Why are there underclassmen here? Weird." Xiao Xie muttered irritably. "Great, 2 deadweights to babysit." He glared at Yinshe and George. "Stick close. Slow me down, and I'll leave you behind. As Yunche stepped through the portal, a chilling pressure enveloped him. This was supposed to be a level 20 to 40 rift, yet it felt far more dangerous. The group advanced through a tunnel lined with blue crystals toward a portal glowing violet. Wait, is that Yunsha and Yunin? Someone gasped. What are they doing here? Aren't they first years? Another whispered. Xiao Xie spotted them too and sneered. Look at that, 2 more lobies tagging along. His gaze lingered on Yunsha, a crooked grin forming. If she's here, maybe I'll finally have some motivation to grind. His grin widened, lost in his own fantasies. A teammate in armor scoffed. Dream on. They're both over level 30, way out of your league. You should be begging them to carry you, not drooling like a fool. Yeah, I know, Xiao Xie grumbled, sulking. I was just saying. At that moment, Yun Sha and Yun Yin approached, walking side by side. Their poise was regal, their presence commanding. Yun Sha brushed past Xiao Xie without so much as a glance, heading straight for Yun Che. Yun Che's brows furrowed slightly. She's a guest of the Ding family, high-ranking, influential. Why approach me? Does she know the body's former owner? Or is this about Ding Su? Yun Sha smiled. I saw you at the museum yesterday. Your reflexes were impressive, and your voice, quite distinctive. Yun Che hesitated inwardly. To small talk? Or a warning? She stepped closer, lowering her tone. So even among the sound of shattering glass, it was easy to recognize. His pupils contracted, memories flashing back to last night. The broken window, the shout that escaped his lips. She recognized me just from that? Yin Sha adjusted her ornate, rune-etched armor and smiled faintly. Well, I've said what I needed to. We'll be off to explore. With that, she and Yin Yin turned gracefully and walked away. Yin Che watched their retreating figures, thoughts swirling. She knew, and still chose not to expose me. Was that a silent warning? Indeed, Ding Su might have recognized their voices too. No matter. As long as the Ding family doesn't trace it back soon, I'll outgrow their reach fast enough. He allowed himself a quiet smirk. If she's kind enough to warn me, I should return the favor. Hey, he called out, voice calm yet firm. You too, be careful. There's something wrong with this rift. Yun Sha paused, her gaze flickering thoughtfully. Now that you mention it, you're right. With my level, I shouldn't be feeling pressure like this. She offered a graceful nod. Thank you for the warning. The onlookers erupted in whispers. Was that Yin Sha? She never talks to anyone. Wait, she actually thanked him? Who is that guy? A few students crowded around Yun Che, grinning. Hey, how you know Yin Sha? You too close or something? Introduce us, man. Yun Che's expression remained indifferent. Sorry, we're leaving. Leaving, someone scoffed. You two want to solo this rift? The mobs here start at level 20. One swipe and you're dead. Xiao Xie raised a hand. Let them go. He analyzed coolly. If he's close to Yin Sha, his level can't be low. But Mr. Li said we should watch out for them. Another protested. Xiao Xie snapped. Don't forget why we're here. The fewer people who know about that place, the better. You want to share those crystals with extras. He waved them off. Everyone's got flare signals anyway. Forget them. Xiao Xie watched Yun Che's back disappear into the distance, jealousy twisting in his gut. Why doesn't nobody like him get to stand next to Yin Sha? His lips curled into a sneer. Fine. If you want to play hero, dying in there will be his own fault. Meanwhile, at the entrance of the rift, Ding Su came sprinting up the steps, face pale with anger. 2 instructors immediately blocked his way. Ding Su, what are you doing here? A team just went in, right? He demanded breathlessly. One teacher frowned. Yeah, why do you ask? Ding Su's eyes darkened, hatred gleaming. Yin Che and George. He remembered Ding Hao's cold words from earlier. Don't cause trouble. Just because they hit you at the museum doesn't mean you can frame them. I've got bigger things to deal with. But I know it's them. Ding Su protested, voice trembling with rage. I recognized their voices. Ding Hao snorted. You're overreacting. If intruders could escape my guards, they wouldn't be mere students. Ding Yi added coolly. If you can prove they're stronger than our guards, maybe we'll believe you. Until then, forget it. Enough. Ding Dan snapped, slamming his palm on the table. We're discussing real matters here. Stop wasting our time. Ding Su's temper finally snapped. He grabbed a staff member by the collar, eyes bloodshot. Yun Che and George, they went inside, didn't they? His voice shook with fury and obsession. Fine. Then I'm going in too. I don't care what it takes. Those bastards won't leave that rift alive. Deep within the rift, crystalline beasts forged from shimmering blue mana lunged forward. Yun Che swung his energy-forged weapon, violet light surging as steel met crystal. A level 20 elemental shrieked, its health bar instantly drained before it shattered into glittering fragments. Yet more creatures surged forth, their bodies pulsing with mana. Waves of purple and blue collided around him, painting the battlefield in chaotic brilliance. One of the monsters reared back, channeling mana beam, reflective state, a blinding arc of power cutting through the air. Yun Che twisted aside in a flash, the beam narrowly missing him and scorching the cavern wall behind. "George, surround shield now," he barked. George reacted instantly, chanting the incantation. Twin shields of liquid gold, adorned with ethereal wings, materialized around Yun Che, granting 500 durability and 700 defense. George followed with a battle cry, encouraging roar, boosting Yun Che's attack power and speed by 5%. Yun Che darted forward like lightning, weaving between mana rays. His blade carved rapid arcs, striking dozens of times in seconds, sending shards flying. "Trick blade, activate," he muttered. The surge of violet energy erupted along his blade as he slashed through a level 30 crystal eye beast, cleaving it cleanly in two. Trick blade active, plus 70% attack power. The monster crumbled into fragments as the system chimed. Level up, player. Yun Che LV .21 free attribute points plus 3. Leveled up to. George shouted, raising his shield with childlike excitement. Level 11, shield bearer class. His voice echoed in the cavern, brimming with pride and disbelief. Yun Che couldn't help but smile faintly. He suddenly recalled the skill books taken from the Ding estate. Two of them, Surround Shield and Battle Cry, were perfectly suited for George's build. With those in his hands, Yun Che thought, even these higher-level monsters will be manageable. His buffs could make a real difference. He remembered what one of the instructors had said earlier. There's a rare creature inside this rift, Obsidian Fiend. That monster was rumored to drop an uncommon support skill, Gravitational Pull. Yun Che's eyes narrowed slightly. That was the very skill he had marked as essential within the mirror world. If he could acquire it, his control over the battlefield would evolve to an entirely new tier. Beyond that, there were whispers of wandering souls, fallen warriors whose spirits still roamed the ruins of this domain. If they truly perished here, Yun Che thought, their remnants might still linger at the highest peaks of the fallen grounds. Suddenly, his gaze snapped forward. Down in the ravine, a colossal creature stirred, its entire body forged from dark amethyst crystal, emanating a sinister aura that warped the air around it. Mana rippled like heat waves. Even from afar, the pressure was suffocating. Yun Che's grip tightened around his weapon as a whisper escaped his lips. That must be the Obsidian Fiend. Yun Che and George reached the canyon. Inside the Crystal Pillar Valley, they saw a group of dark purple obsidian beasts wandering around. There were far more of them than expected, each one an elite type, and their movement had already spread over a kilometer, far beyond normal monster range. Wandering types? Yun Che thought. Wandering-type monsters were rare in rifts. They didn't respawn in fixed places but moved freely through the area. Their strength was much greater than that of normal creatures. In the early days, when humans were weaker, meeting a wandering monster always meant a deadly battle. Some even strayed beyond the rift, bringing disasters into the outside world. Still, defeating them granted much better experience and loot than ordinary monsters. Yun Che watched the group carefully, gauged the difference in strength, then dashed forward to test one of them with a sudden strike. Yun Che was surprised to find that the level 30 Obsidian Crystal Guardian had a continuous regeneration skill. The creature fired dense mana beams from both hands, the crossing rays forming a deadly web of light. Their attacks came fast and without pause, leaving almost no room to dodge. In this situation, speed alone couldn't save him. Yunche's HP and defense were too low. If not for George's surround shield, he would have already been badly injured. He quickly summoned his undead army for support. But even the level 23 skeleton spirits couldn't withstand the crystal monster's fierce assault. Fortunately, their movements were still relatively slow. Yunche realized that his HP and defense couldn't improve fast enough. His only chance was to rely on George's newly gained defensive boosts. Yunche walked up to George and said, "Come on, let's farm some regular monsters and level up first." He led George to a low-level hunting area that he had seen plenty of monsters there from the high ground, perfect for training. In team combat, a shield bearer was always the first and most vital line of defense. George raised his basic shield, barely blocking the monster's heavy strike. Other roles stayed behind the tank to attack safely from the rear. Since then, George had allocated all his stat points into defense. With the armor they took from the Ding family's guards, he finally had the proper durability of a true shield bearer. Now he could withstand blows from level 20 monsters. Yunche coached him from the side, lower your stance, hold firm, and swing the shield toward the attack's direction. George followed his instructions and successfully blocked the monster's strike. To his surprise, the shield's durability was dropping much slower than before. Yunche kept reminding George to watch for follow-up attacks. George braced himself but was still pushed back a few steps. Seeing that, Yunche rushed forward and struck down the monster in one swift blow. He instructed calmly, "Always watch for the enemy's next move. Don't swing your shield too hard. Keep some energy for the next block. Stay alert, but keep your body loose. Only tense up at the moment of impact." Yunche patted George's chest plate. Again, standing behind him, he added, "I'm right here. A shield bearer. You must always be aware of your teammates behind you." Under Yunche's precise guidance, their coordination grew sharper, and the two cut through wave after wave of monsters. "Remember," Yunche said, "when the power gap isn't huge, technique decides the outcome." When the area was finally cleared, Yunche had reached level 22, gaining 3 free attribute points to distribute. Yunche glanced at George, thinking that this training would not only boost his confidence, but also help him gain more combat experience. "I leveled up 15, George shouted excitedly. He looked at the glowing skill book in his hands, eyes wide with excitement. "Finally, I can learn it." The book's info appeared clearly on the interface. Skill book, shield armor. Adds an external layer of armor to the shield, increasing durability by 400 and defense by 512. Rarity. Rare. Required level 15. Class restriction. Shield bearer. As the book dissolved into motes of light, George learned the new skill that a skill-acquired message appeared. It was the last usable book from the Ding family's loot. The new skill also enhanced the summoned skeleton soldiers, coating their shields with a green spectral glow. With the extra layer of defense from shield armor, they now had the protection needed to take on elite wandering monsters. Meanwhile, 3 teachers arrived at the Crystal Pillar Canyon. Towering purple crystals jutted out from the ground, and deep within the gorge, several armored beasts prowled slowly. On the cliff above, Zhuangzheng, Lei Lai, and Lan watched the scene below with suspicion. "So many elite wandering monsters. Where did they come from?" one muttered. "This is too dangerous for students." Lan's tone grew tense. "Regular level. 30 monsters are manageable. But these elites, they're another story." Zhuangzheng's expression turned grim. Just then, a flare shot into the sky with a sharp whistle. A student's distress signal. "Forget this area for now," Zhuangzheng said decisively. "We need to help the students first." Lan, still uneasy, added, "But these wandering monsters are dangerous too. What if the students run into them without realizing it?" Lei Lai nodded. "You're right that I'll stay here to keep watch." Zhuangzheng agreed. "All right, Old Bai stays behind in case something happens, that if there's any sign of..." Before he could finish, Yunche stepped forward and interrupted, "Let us handle this side." He and George walked up behind them. That distress flare might have been caused by these wandering monsters. 2 teachers alone might not be enough to handle it. The teachers looked surprised and uneasy. Yun Che explained calmly. These monsters move slowly, and they haven't noticed us yet that we'll just keep watch from a distance. It'll be fine. You should go. All right, one of them finally said, though still hesitant. But listen, those creatures are extremely dangerous. Don't do anything reckless. If they spot you, you won't make it out alive. With that warning, they hurried off toward the direction of the flare. The teacher's warning still echoed in Yun Che's ears, but he ignored it. His eyes gleamed with excitement and a chilling edge as he stared down at the monsters below. Gripping his weapon tight, violet energy surged around him. The monster's crystal armor began to crack apart. Now it was their turn to have no escape. The obsidian crystal beasts spotted their target and unleashed a barrage of mana rays. George immediately activated his surrounding shield, combining it with his shield armor to block the assault. The spectral green barrier of the undead shattered under the force of the mana beams. As the monsters focused their fire on the undead, Yun Che seized the opening. His blade slashed fast and hard, tearing through the crystal armor. With a final heavy strike, he cleaved the creature clean in half. The level, 30 obsidian crystal beast's health dropped to 0, its body covered in cracks before collapsing into shards. As the system chime echoed, Yun Che felt a rush of exhilaration. One wandering monster down that he was starting to get the hang of this class. Yet it was still far from his former peak. Even with boosted attack power from the mirror reversal skill, his skeletal soldiers were being pushed back under the monster's relentless assault. As Yun Che shattered the last monster, he thought to himself, the base attack of a support class is still too low that if I could just boost it a little more. The creature fell, and the familiar system chime followed. Another level up, and oh surprise there. Rare elites always came with generous experience. A prompt appeared to collect the loot. Yun Che bent down, and his eyes caught the gleam of a new weapon, a crystal longsword with plus 552 attack power. Perfect. That'll cover my weak base damage, he muttered. With this sword equipped, the next battles would be much easier. Unfortunately, there was still no gravity pull skill book in sight. The drop rate really wasn't high. If I'm lucky, maybe I'll find another wandering pack. Just then, a flare burst through the air and exploded above, the same direction as the earlier distress signal. But this time, the color marked it as a Tier 1 distress flare, used only by teacher squads. Across the canyon, Zhuang Zheng clenched his jaw, his expression grim as he raised his shield against the oncoming monsters. A group of students was surrounded by a swarm of wandering beasts. Why are there so many of them gathered here? The monsters packed tightly around the students, enclosing the holy light barrier in a suffocating ring. The situation was dire. The shield could collapse at any moment. The rescue team stared in shock at the sight before them, as so many monsters gathered in one place. What on earth had happened here? A dark-haired man answered, "We don't know yet. We just followed the signal to help. The flare came from inside that cave. They're probably trapped in there." Rescue efforts were already underway, but the sheer number of monsters made it nearly impossible. Even with all the teachers present, manpower was still insufficient. Someone turned toward Yun Sha and Yunin. If you two could lend a hand, it would make a huge difference. The sisters exchanged a glance and smiled. "Of course, it's our duty," Yun Sha replied. Raising her staff, Yun Sha began to chant softly, Star Right Arcana. A massive golden magic circle spread across the ground. Countless star-like motes of light flowed into everyone's bodies, and glowing buffs appeared across their skin. Spirit plus 2%. Attack plus 20%. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Such a powerful boost, that's at least an epic grade spell. At the same time, a powerful gravitational force surged from the ground as Yun Sha cast gravitic pressure, pinning the wandering beast firmly to the earth. On the other side, Yun Yin activated Hidden Strike, her figure blurred, and in a flash, one of the monsters collapsed, lifeless. Gasps and cheers erupted from the crowd. Incredible. Our morale's back. With Yun Sha and Yun Yin here, we can save them for sure. Arriving at the scene, Yun Che took in the battle, thinking to himself, top-tier gear, top-tier skills. Even without me, they've got this handled. His gaze shifted toward the dark depths of the cave. But what exactly is inside? What could draw so many wandering monsters here? He turned to George. I'll go check it out. Stay here with the others. With that, he activated Mirror Walk. The system timer appeared. 29 minutes, 59 seconds remaining. His body phased through the crystal wall, slipping into the mirror world. The place was filled with reflective crystal surfaces, endless mirrors, all connected. He could move between them freely. Yet, he still hadn't figured out how to return to reality. Back at the Ding estate, once the mirror walk timer ran out, he hadn't been able to re-enter again. As Yin Che stepped into the cave, the mirrored walls reflected faint human silhouettes. Strangely, there were no reflections of the monsters, yet their corpses remained visible, meaning that, in the mirror world, he was the only living entity with a physical presence. He continued deeper into the tunnel until the mirrored surface revealed a cluster of human figures. Among them, he recognized one of the trapped students. That face, it was Xiao Xie. So it was them. They must have triggered the wandering horde and then fired the distress flare. For now, they seemed safe, holding out in a narrow passage that limited enemy movement. But what truly intrigued him was the mystery ahead. What could possibly draw so many wandering beasts to this place? Yin Che moved deeper through a corridor of glowing green crystal. The walls, floor, and ceiling were all made of jagged facets of quartz-like stone, making it nearly impossible to tell one path from another. Suddenly, his pupils contracted in surprise. No way, these are special crystal ores in a wonder Xiao Xie and the others came to this cave. These crystals were unlike anything outside, rare minerals that could only be formed within secret realms. For life skill professionals, such materials were priceless, used to forge equipment, accessories, and unique enchanted items. Their value easily exceeded that of gold by several times over. He picked up a shard, and a system prompt appeared. Item can be taken out into the real world. His eyes widened. So from here, I can return to reality. Then a faint smile tugged at his lips. So as long as there's a reflective surface, I can travel back to the real world through it. This ability clearly had untapped potential, something worth studying later. Gathering every crystal or within reach, he stored them all away. Once finished, he turned back toward the depths of the cave, his curiosity urging him onward. Yin Che looked around in disbelief. The sheer amount of crystal ore here was abnormal. If mined, it would make an ordinary person a billionaire overnight. In no wonder so many wandering monsters gathered here. Outside, the battle raged on. Yin Sha raised her staff and unleashed gravitic pressure, crushing hordes of beasts beneath invisible force. Yin Yin followed up with Twin Blade Rampage, slashing through the enemies in a storm of flashing steel. Then came Starfall. Countless streaks of light rained down from above like falling stars. The students watching were stunned. Are all their skills epic tier? They're way stronger than the teachers. With the two of them joining the fight, the students finally breathed a sigh of relief. We're saved. I really thought we were going to die here. Yin cautioned, don't relax yet. We still have to fight our way out. Her voice was calm but firm. Everyone was clearly exhausted. Yin Sha smiled faintly. Still, it's better than before. Then, in an instant, her expression hardened, her eyes sharp as blades. The students followed her gaze and froze in shock. From the depths of the cavern, an overwhelming sight came into view, a writhing tide of shadow monsters flooding forward like a living wave. Each creature radiated a sinister purple glow, their presence suffocating and cold. Don't tell me. All the wandering beasts in the entire dungeon have gathered here. Meanwhile, within the mirrored world, Yin Che watched countless beams of light refract endlessly between crystal surfaces, painting the surroundings in an almost dreamlike glow. He moved carefully across the fractured crystal planes, a glittering maze of mirrored paths and shifting reflections. Then he stopped, his gaze drawn toward a massive silhouette ahead. A towering crystal tree stood before him, its translucent trunk pulsing with a soft emerald glow from within. Yun-Che stepped closer, staring in awe at the radiant core at its center. Could this be the dungeon's hidden treasure? If the colorful mineral ores outside were mere byproducts of this realm, then this crystal heart was its true essence. Formed over countless years, condensed from the purest energies of the secret realm, it was said that few ever laid eyes upon one in their lifetime. And because of that, such hidden treasures were often endowed with powers beyond imagination. Yun-Che stared at the crystal in his hand, excitement flickering in his eyes, a confident smile curved his lips as a glowing system window appeared before him. Mirror Crystal Core, unique hidden treasure, permanently increases stamina by +10, restores mana by +0.5 per second, reduces light and electric damage by 20%, a replica of the Crystal Realm's core treasure. Yun-Che's eyes gleamed at a treasure that boosted base stats, improved survivability, and reduced damage. This was priceless. More stamina meant greater HP. Faster mana regen meant more stacked phantom blades, and magic resistance would keep him alive longer. But the true prize was the 20% damage reduction, a percentage-based buff rarely seen even in legendary gear, and this one didn't even occupy an equipment slot. Still, something felt off that a treasure of this level should have drawn monsters far stronger than the wandering beasts outside. Why was the area completely silent? Whatever, he muttered. I'll use it first, then leave. With that, he reached out and tapped the glowing use icon. A warning flashed before his eyes. Using or collecting this item will consume 10 minutes of mirror walk duration. Continue. It drains mirror time. Yun-Che's eyes narrowed, a flicker of unease crossing his face. At the same time, a thunderous rumble echoed from the far side of the cavern, shaking the ground beneath everyone's feet. The walls cracked apart as chunks of rock tumbled down. The entire cave seemed to quake as if something massive was awakening. Then, with a blinding surge of violet light, a colossal creature of dark amethyst crystal slowly rose from the depths. Its towering frame loomed tens of meters high, its crystalline armor pulsing with malevolent energy as it looked down upon the trembling humans below. Is that the Lord of the Wandering Beasts? No, that's not a lord. It's a hidden boss,